Okay, so good morning once again, everyone. So today we'll be having our last discussion video for lease accounting, no? So medyo mahaba-haba talaga tong topic na to, kaya umabot tayo sa I think 6 discussion videos, di ba? Anyway, at least kung matapos na natin ito ngayon, hopefully na marami talaga kayong kumbaga makukuha. At least kahit medyo brief yung mga discussion, somehow nakuha niyo yung mga basic concepts, no? Yung mga basic concepts. So, let us begin with our first example, okay? So in this scenario, this is, or we are still in the perspective of the lessor, and then this is considered as a finance lease, no? However, but instead of a direct finance lease, this is a sales type lease. Why? Because again, number one, the lessor in this scenario is a dealer in equipment, meaning the lessor is into buy and sell, and that as part, okay, to increase the volume maybe of sales, is that yung setup niya is that to sell installment but under the form of lease. Okay? In form, lease siya, but in substance, sales. Okay? Sales. So, kakaiba siya doon sa direct finance lease natin. Or rather, yung direct finance lease is hindi natin ma-apply dito kasi nga, dealer in equipment. Okay? So, number one, di ba, if we are to deal with the lessor's perspective in lease accounting, okay, we need to account for two item, di ba? That is our first thing that we need to do. And that is to account for your gross investment, di ba? And number two, for your net investment. Okay? Diba? Ito yun siya. Dito, pag sales type lease kasi, okay? Pag sales type lease, one of the major difference, okay? One of the major difference from a direct finance lease, a straightforward lease, is that in a sales type lease, we need to recognize a dealer's profit. And that is computed as your sales less your cost of sales or cost of goods sold. Okay? So in that sense, okay, yung kumbaga, under a sales type lease, yung gross investment natin, same pa rin siya to what is a gross investment in a direct finance lease. That is, we need to recognize, number one, the rental at gross amount, and if there are any guaranteed residual value or purchase option which is reasonably certain to be exercised, it is also added to our gross investment, okay, at gross investment at gross amount. Okay, same pa rin yun siya sa direct finance lease. However, pagdating sa net investment, kung sa direct finance lease, our net investment is in general equivalent to our carrying amount or cost plus any plus any initial direct cost. Dito, pagdating sa sales type lease, okay, pagdating sa sales type lease, yung net investment natin is just basically the present value, okay, the present value of your gross investment. So that is number one component, present value of the annual rental. Number two, if there are any guaranteed residual value or purchase option, present value of that. That is your net investment. Such that if we are to account for the difference, that will be your unearned interest income. The difference between gross and net. So same pa rin siya, kumbaga, sa direct financing lease. Okay? The unearned interest income is computed as gross investment less your net investment. However, we also need to recognize our dealer's profit with this computation. Sales being equivalent to your net investment. While your cost of sales or cost of goods sold, number one, it is composed of your cost or carrying amount of equipment, okay, plus initial direct costs, okay, plus initial direct costs. So that is how we'll compute for dealer's profit. Sales minus cost of sales. Sales equivalent to your net present value. Cost of sales is equal to your cost of equipment plus any direct initial cost. Okay? Or initial direct cost. Diba? So, going back to our problem, okay? Going back to our scenario, the first component is our rental or the lease payment. Diba? So again, gross investment at gross amount. So we have an annual rental of 875,000, diba? Multiplied by the lease term of 8 years. So that is 875,000 times 8. So we have 7 million. So that is your gross investment. In the net investment, all we need to do in relation to your rental is just to multiply it by the present value factor, which in this case, we will use present value of annuity in advance. Why? Because the rental payment is to be paid at the beginning of each year. Diba? So that is in advance, not ordinary annuity. So the present value factor, that is 5.8684. The present value is now computed at 7 million times 5.8684. So that is nasubrahan. So 7 million times 5.86. Ay, no, sorry. Wait. That is not 7 million. Okay? So, this is your gross. So, to compute for your present value, again, we'll use the annual payment of 875 multiplied by your present value factor of 5.8684. Again, hindi yung 7 million na kasi yun yung total. The annual payment. Okay? The annual payment. So, 875,000 multiplied by 5.8684. That would be 5,134,850. So, this is your net investment. Okay? That is your net investment. So, first component. Number two, in this particular problem, we have a purchase option. So again, this is to be included to your gross investment at gross amount, which is at 300,000. Then net investment at your present value, which is this is to be multiplied at your present value factor of 1. Now, why 1? Again, very basic because this is only a one-time cash flow, hindi multiple. Isang beses mo lang matatanggap. So, you will use present value of 1. Okay? So, 300,000 multiplied by our present value factor of 0.4665. So, we have 300,000 times 0.4665. We have 139,950. Okay? So, I guess there are no other data. So, with that, our gross investment basically is equivalent to 7,300,000, while our net investment, that is 5,134,850. 5,134,850 plus 1,399,50. So that is 5,274,800. Okay, that is 5,274,800. Okay? The difference between the two, which is that is 7,300,000, that is 2,025,200. This will be your unearned interest income. Okay, that is your unearned interest income. Now, the next factor that we need to compute is that how much is the dealer's profit. So again, our sales equals to your net investment of 5,274,800. Okay, 5,274,800. Your cost of sales, which is number one, the cost of the asset, that is 3,100,000. And because there is no initial direct cost, ito lang yung cost natin at 3,100,000. That is equals to 5,274,800 minus the 3,100,000 cost. So our dealer's profit for this particular case, that is 2,174,800. No? So now, let us make the journal entry. Okay? So again, this is your dealer's profit. So let us make the journal entry. Okay? On the date of initial recognition, which is January 1, 2020. Okay? So, our debit, okay, would be lease receivable, okay, at gross amount, which is 7,300,000. Okay? Then credit to your lease liability. Not to your lease liability rather, but to your sales. Kasi nga, this is a sales type lease, di ba? Isa ito sa pinagkakaiba, or this is one of the difference between a direct finance lease and a sales type lease, because yun nga, in a direct finance lease or straightforward lease, supposedly yung credit natin dito diretso sa asset, which is subject of the lease. Again, yung sales natin is that at net investment, which is 5,274,800. Then, credit your unearned interest income, which is at 2,025,000, okay, 200. Okay, so that is our first entry on initial recognition. Now, the second entry, because we need to make two, or kung medyo madali na lang para sa atin, actually we can combine this, but for the sake of discussion, let's just make two entries, no? We will recognize the yung kumbaga yung normal entry natin if we are using the perpetual inventory system, which is the debit to your cost of sales, credit to your inventory, no? So cost of sales, credit inventory at the cost of the asset. Itong 3,100,000. Okay? So that is our entry for the initial recognition. Now, subsequent recognition, okay? Subsequent recognition, again, if you can still remember, no? We are to record the collection which is a credit to your lease receivable, debit to cash at gross amount annual rental. Diba? Yan yun siya. And then, we need to recognize the interest income, which is computed using the effective interest method. Okay? So, the first thing that we need to do is to develop our amortization schedule. Diba? For the sake of discussion, no? Kasi medyo mahaba siya, 8 years. But, kung medyo madali na lang talaga to sa inyo, if you can remember the concept of effective amortization schedule, basically, on 12/31/2020, the interest income is computed as, number 1, your net present value, di ba? 5,274,800, and because there is advance payment, bawasan muna natin to ng advance payment, yung nabayad noong which is yung payment natin for January 1, 2020, which is 871. Kasi nga, itong 875,000 rather, okay, yung 875,000 is hindi na to siya mag-earn ng interest kasi nga binayaran in advance, di ba? Advance payment. So the point is, yung mag-earn lang ng interest for 2020 is itong 5,274,800 multiplied by your implicit rate of 10%, which is 5,277, sorry. But that is 5,274,800 less the advance payment of 875,000 multiplied by 10%. So that is 439,980. This is your interest income in 2020. Di ba? So, however, that is kung medyo sanay na kayo sa effective amortization schedule, kung hindi na kayo nililito. But for the sake of discussion, let us prepare the effective interest amortization schedule. No? Medyo mahaba nga lang to, but again, we'll have to prepare, okay? So, again, start with date, the rental, the interest income, the payment applicable to principal, and your carrying amount. The first date is January 1, 2020. Initially, we started with 5,274,800, di ba? However, on January 1, 2020 also, we had a payment of 875,000. Again, this is non-interest bearing dito na portion sa amortization schedule, dito na portion because, yun nga, advance payment pa lang to. And if you can see, yung payment nangyari at the beginning of the year. So, hindi talaga siya nag-earn ng interest for that 875,000 portion. Oh, okay? Hindi siya nag-earn ng interest income. So, lahat yan applicable sa principal. So, the carrying amount after the advance payment is computed as 800 minus 875,000. Yun nga, 4,399,800. Okay? Now, di ba, on 12/31, okay? Or, let's just continue per amortization schedule para hindi na lang siya mas mahaba, no? So, the next amortization schedule, this is January 1, 2021, di ba? Payment of 875,000. January 1, 2022, 875,000. 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027. So 875,000, 875,000, and so on. Okay? Now, the interest, okay, for the first amortization schedule after the advance payment, that is 4,399,800 times 10%. So that is 439,980. So the applicable deduction to your carrying amount, that is 435,020. Your carrying amount after the payment on January 1, 2021, that is 3,964,780. Now, first, no, before we continue, huwag kayong malito, no? Baka kasi malito kayo, bakit itong first amortization schedule after the advance payment, yung date is January 1, 2021. So itong interest income natin, saan ito applicable? 2020 or 2021? Obviously, this is your interest income in 2020. Remember that, ha? That is your interest income in 2020. Kasi nga, for one, although it was paid on January 1, okay? Although it is paid on January 1, hindi pa nangyayari yung the whole year for 2021. Di ba? So meaning, ito siya, this is applicable in the prior year, which is from January 1, 2020 to December 31, 2020. Yung presentation lang natin dito is ganito, to be practical, no? Para hindi tayo malito sa amortization schedule. But, the point is, kasi nga, beginning of the year ito nangyari, obviously, this is applicable in the prior year. Kuha yun na. So next, interest. To continue the illustration, so we have 3,964,780. Typical na to. 4,78552. So we have 3,486 times 0.10 na naman. So this is 348,626. Round lang natin. Minus 875,000. So that is 526,374. 348,628 less 526,374. So we have 2,959,884 times 10% na naman. So that is 889. So we have 579. 884 less the applicable for the principal of 2,380,873 multiplied again by 10%. So we have 238,087 636,913 less 2,380,873 times 10% na naman. So, balik-balik lang talaga, no? Napaka-tedious talaga minsan, lalo na pag mahaba yung lease term natin. But we need to do it to fully understand the concept of effective interest schedule, no? So, less 1,743,960 So you have 1,043,356. Okay? 1,043,356 multiply by 10%. So that is 1,04336 less 875,000. So we have 770,664. So we have 272,692 now. Ngayon, baka magtaka kayo, no? Sir, dati if we are to make the amortization schedule to be practical, dinidiretso na natin to make our balance zero. But you have to remember, okay, na pag in advance, this is not yet the last day of the lease term, di ba? Advance payment nga lang kasi we still have to consume 12/31/2027 in this particular example, which on this day we are still expecting to receive something. And what is that? Your purchase option, which is at 300,000. Okay? So this 272,692, this would still earn an interest of 2769 or 27,270. Less that to your 300,000. Okay? We have 272,730.8. Or to be practical, kasi nga, yung aim natin dito, kasi last term na, we need to put this into zero. And the difference between the two, this is just rounding of differences na. Okay? So basically, let's just deduct that diretso. So that would 272,692 minus 300,000. So the interest is 27,308. Obviously, this is 272,692. So this is 0 na. So that is your amortization schedule. No? So the point is, number 1 lang dito, kasi nga may advance payment, hindi ito yung starting carrying amount natin, but rather ito. Because we need to deduct first the advance payment. And number 3, huwag kayong malito na kahit 2021 yung year. Dito, for example, this applies to our current year, previous year na interest income. Same with 2022, this is for 2021. Yung 2023 natin, itong 348,626, this is for 2022, and so on. Okay? So, on 12/31/2020, okay, we need to recognize the interest income. So, the point is, yung entry lang naman dyan, very basic, debit, unearned, interest income, credit, interest income. At what amount? Ito. Diba? Yung sa first amortization natin, that is 439,980. Okay? Then, for the payment, again, if you can still remember, always at gross. So, debit, lease, receivable, debit, cash, credit, lease, receivable. Okay? At ito, full amount. Diba? 875,000. Then to be precise, hindi to 12/31/2020 mangyayari. This is January 1, 2021. So that is your subsequent journal entry. So, this concept, follow na yan siya dito lahat. Okay? Except for this. Except in the last, or except on December 31, 2017. Why? Because we are now to um, kumbaga, receive the purchase option. So the point is, if the purchase option is really exercised, okay, if the purchase option is really exercised, then obviously, if this will be followed talaga, no, on December 31, 2017, okay, all we need to do to record the purchase option is to debit your cash, credit your lease receivable. Assuming all entries are made up to January 1, 2017, obviously, yung matitira na lang is itong 300,000. So, if the option is exercised, debit cash, credit your lease receivable, which is the outstanding balance on December 31, 2017 at 300,000. Yeah? If the option is not exercised, okay, if the option is not exercised, then we need to record, okay, we need to record the reversion of the inventory to the lessor or yung pagbalik ng inventory sa lessor kasi nga hindi na-exercise yung option. So kumbaga, walang or yung sale ay yung asset ibabalik kay lessor. Okay, ibabalik kay lessor. So the point is, assuming hindi siya na-exercise, we will debit inventory. Okay? Debit inventory. At, remember this, always, fair market value. If there are any difference, recognize it as gain or loss on lease. Okay? Gain or loss on lease. So, paano mangyayari yung gain? Yung gain mangyayari if, okay, if the fair market value of the asset is higher than the lease receivable outstanding balance. Which, in this particular case, ito nga, 300,000. If the fair market value is lower than this, than the outstanding balance of your lease receivable, then we have a loss. Sa example nga, assuming daw na yung fair market value, okay, yung fair market value is at 200,000 only, then, yung entry natin dyan, on 12/31/2017, would be to debit your inventory. Why debit inventory? Kung napansin natin, di ba, ito yung entry natin sa pagtanggal ng inventory, oh. Di ba? Sa pagtanggal ng inventory. So, hindi nga na-exercise yung purchase option, dapat yan siya ibalik. Ibalik at fair market value. Always at fair market value. So, kung 200,000 yan, then we'll credit lease receivable. Okay? At 300,000. Diba this balance? May difference of 100,000. That is your loss on sales type lease or loss on lease. 100,000. Okay? Now, baliktad. What if yung fair market value is 400,000? So, again, debit inventory at 400,000, credit your lease receivable, okay, at 300,000, then credit your gain. Kasi nga, mas mataas na yung fair market value kaysa lease receivable. Gain on lease. 100,000. So, yun. Yun lang yung sales type lease, no? Sales type lease. Balik tayo ng kaunti, no? Baka magtaka kayo dito sa initial or yung original entry natin on initial recognition. Sir, saan dyan yung dealer's profit? Bakit hindi namin nakikita? The point is, if you can still remember your accounting, your basic journal entry, perpetual inventory, no? We do not recognize gross profit per account title, di ba? Bakit? Kasi nga, yung gross profit natin is already buried sa sales account. Okay? Nandito na sa sales account. Kaya nga, kung titingnan natin ito, sales minus your cost of sales, what is that? Your gross profit. Di ba? Already buried dito sa amount ng 5274800. So, that is for sales type lease, no? So, let us go to another scenario. Okay? Let us go to another scenario. Our next scenario would be, although wala na tayo sa perspective ng lessor ha, but this is a different scenario, no? Both on the books of both on the perspective of the lessee and the lessor, no? What if the transaction is, there is a sale, no? So wala pang lease, but rather there is muna a sale, okay? Sale, number 1. Then, after the sale, immediately, there is a lease. So, anong nangyayari dito? Ako, for example, nagbenta. Then, after the sale, I would negotiate to the buyer na I would lease the item that I have sold. Okay? So, ang tawag dyan na transaction, basically, that is sale and leaseback. Okay? That is sale and leaseback. So, the point of that is that there is a sale of leaseback if these two particular transaction would occur. Number 1, there is a sale, and number 2, there is an immediate lease coming from the seller. So after the transaction, or in a sale and leaseback, basically the seller becomes the seller lessee, while the buyer becomes the buyer lessor. Kuha niyo? So si seller nagbenta, but at the same time nirentahan niya or nilease niya, so that is it becomes the seller lessee. The buyer binili niya, okay, then at the same time pinarenta, so si buyer ngayon becomes buyer lessor. Okay? So ano yung complication natin pagdating sa sale and leaseback? Okay? Now, in a sale and leaseback transaction, diba, the point is, in every sale, there is, any gain or loss. Okay, diba? So, the point is, pag may sale and leaseback, yung thinking always natin dyan, on the part of the seller lessee, is that, hindi niya binenta lahat in substance. Kasi nga, may bumalik sa kanya in the form of lease. Okay? Ano yung bumalik sa kanya? Yung right of use asset. Okay? So, kumbaga, if you sold an item costing 8 million, then nirenta mo, assuming, nirenta mo, then, after computation, or kumbaga, the point is, hindi ito 100% na ibenta. Kasi nga, merong na-retain na portion of this na nirentahan mo. Kasi nga, sale and leaseback. So, yung portion na nirenta mo, yun yung right of use asset natin. Okay? Number 2, because there is a portion retained by leasing it, any gain or loss, is not to be recognized 100%. Kasi nga, in substance, hindi mo binenta lahat. May na-retain sa'yo. So, any gain or loss, we need to adjust to conform with the right of use asset remaining at your control. Okay? At your in your hands, kumbaga, no? In your hands. So we need to adjust any gain or loss. Okay? So basically yan yung complication lang natin dyan, no? Number 1, how do we measure the right of use asset? And number 2, what is the adjusted gain? Kasi nga, hindi lahat dapat i-recognize as a gain. Okay? Hindi lahat i-recognize as a gain. Okay? So let us go directly with the scenario. No? So in this example, okay, or in this scenario, okay, one company nagbenta ng machine and immediately list it back at market rental. So yung sales price at fair value, always recognize your sales price at fair value. Remember that? 5 million. So fair value of the machine, obviously that is 5 million. No? Carrying amount of the machine, that is 4.5. Annual rental is 600. So yun yung mga data. So sana, kung walang leaseback lang sana ito, di ba? Kung walang leaseback, 5 million minus your 4,500,000, okay? Minus your 4,500,000, we would recognize gain on, or not gain on sale, but we will recognize gross profit because, gain on sale because we assume na, kasi nga hindi stated, hindi to dealer, di ba? So this is gain on sale of 500,000. However, because one company leased it back, a portion of this 500,000, okay, is not sold. Nasa kanya pa. Ano yung portion na yun? Or what is that portion represents? Your rights of use asset. Okay? That is why, or which is why, if there is a sale and leaseback, okay, if there is a sale in leaseback, this is not your typical computation in the books of the lessee na kung ano yung composition ng supposedly rights of use and lease liability. Parang, kumbaga, if there are no other payments directly paid today, no, immediately, equal, di ba, sila, if you can still remember, equal yung right of use and lease liability. However, because may leaseback nga, may portion na na-retain, hindi na yun yung typical computation natin. But, we need to recognize that portion. How? By using the ratio of the lease liability over the fair value multiplied by the carrying amount. That is your right of use asset. Okay? That is your right of use asset. So, kung baga, to illustrate, no? Kasi nga, di ba, if we are to record this particular scenario in the perspective of the lessee, we need to get our right of use asset and our lease liability, di ba? Sa lease liability natin, walang problema kasi typical computation lang. Present value of the rental payments, di ba? And so on. So in this particular case, okay, for this particular case, yung annual rental ni lessee, the seller lessee, is 600,000. Multiplied by the present value of an ordinary annuity for 5 periods at 10%, kasi nga 5 years yung lease term, so times 3.791, okay? 600,000 times 3.791, we have 2,274,600. So that will form part to your lease liability. Now for your right of use asset, Hindi yan siya yung computation natin. But we need to get the ratio of this over the fair market value multiplied by the carrying amount. That will be our right of use asset. Being, if we understand it, or if we understood it, multiplier or multiply to your carrying amount to represent na that particular portion, hindi yan siya yung nabenta. Okay? Retained asset. So again, what will be a right of use asset? Lease liability over your fair market value, which in this case, that is 5 million. Okay? Multiplied by your carrying amount of 4,500,000. Okay? This is your carrying amount. That is, okay? 2,047,140. Okay? 2,047,140. Okay? Next. But because also, no, hindi, yun nga, nakita na natin na hindi lahat na ibenta. Also, but also, there is that portion na naibenta na nga. Kasi nga, kung papansinin natin, if we are to look at this computation, no, kung magkano yung na-retain na asset sa kanya, 4,500,000 yung total carrying amount ng naibenta na asset. Diba? 2,047,140 lang yung na-retain. So basically, meron tayong naibenta na 4,500,000 less 2,047,140. Meron tayong naibenta na 2,452,860. Okay? So, now, the gain that should be recognized in this particular transaction in a sale and leaseback should pertain to that gain applicable to your 2,452,860, which in essence is the gain applicable to your in substance actual sale. Okay? Actual sale. So how are we going to compute that? Simple lang. Your lease liability again, 2274. Wait. 2274,600 over your fair market value na naman. Multiplied by the gain. Which, ang gain natin, yung total gain, okay, total gain to ha, multiplied by your total gain. Yung total gain natin, okay, yung total gain, that is computed as the sales, which is again, always equivalent to your fair market value at 5 million, less the cost, or yung carrying amount na 4,500, as what we have computed kanina, that was 500,000 na gain, di ba? So this is 500,000. So the point is 2274,600. Okay? 2274,600 divided by your 5 million. Okay? Divided by your 5 million multiplied by your gain of 500,000. This is sorry. times 500,000, that is 2,274,460. Now, this amount, okay, kung napansin natin, ano tong numerator na ginamit natin? Di ba ito yung lease liability? This pertains to the gain applicable to your right of use asset. Okay, this pertains to your gain applicable to your right of use asset, which means ito yung not to be recognized. Okay? Kasi nga na-retain ito, or although ibinenta but subsequently recognized back as an asset under right of use asset. So, hindi na ibenta. This is not to be presented. Not to be recognized gain. So, if we have 500,000 less the gain not to be recognized, our gain to be recognized would be basically be 227,460, 272,540. Gain to be recognized. Okay, gain to be recognized. So, okay, if we are to journalize this, okay, we are to journalize this on January 1, 2020, okay, number one, in the books of the lessee, we need to debit cash. Kasi nga, to, nagbenta tayo, sales price at fair value, di ba? 5 million. Okay? Credit your machinery. Okay, credit your machinery at carrying amount. Always be very basic. Diba? Then, okay, debit machinery of 4,500,000, no? Credit your lease liability. Okay, credit your lease liability at kano ngayon? 227,600. Okay? Then, recognize your gain on rights transferred. Which is, ano yung gain to be recognized? 272,540. And then, yung kulang na lang natin dito is our, wait, let's adjust cash, our rights of use asset. Kasi nga, we need to recognize this at 2,047,140. Okay? So, okay, yun. This is our entry on initial recognition. Okay? So, now, para hindi kayo malito, isa-isahin natin ito ganito. Di ba? No? 5 million yung sales natin. Then we have a machinery of 4,500,000. Kaya nga, resulting to a gain of 500,000. However, if we look at our rights of use asset and our lease liability, kung titingnan natin, mas maliit yung nakuha nating asset kaysa inassume natin na liability, which is at 227,460. So kung baga, if we are to compare this, we are at a loss. Mas maliit yung asset, okay? Mas maliit yung asset compared to our liability. Okay? So the point is, if this is the gain, yung net gain natin, bawasan sa loss recognized by the smaller or lower asset versus the higher liability. Okay? So, yun nga, if we are to compute that, magkano yung loss natin sa pag-recognize ng higher liability versus your asset, basically, that is computed as 2,047,140 less 2,274,600. Diba? So, we have a loss of minus 2,274,600. 2,274,60. Now, saan yan siya equivalent? Dito. Yung gain not to be recognized. Yan lang yung point dyan. No? Yan lang yung point. Which, kumbaga, ito, in essence, in substance, ito yung i-recognize natin supposedly na interest expense in the lease term. Okay? In the lease term. So, this is your entry. Okay? Now, if we are to continue this, no, for one subsequent period na lang nga para mas madali para sa atin, no? Simple lang naman kasi because after this, we now know what to do, subsequent recognition. Normal accounting na. Okay? Normal accounting. So, that means na itong right of use asset, we need to depreciate. Again, how are we going to depreciate? Lower. Okay? The lower between the lease term and the life. Because, yun nga, as stated here, walang transfer of title, nor there is a purchase option reasonably certain. Okay? Reasonably certain. So, lease term. So, if we are to recognize the depreciation of that, that is 2,047,140 divided by 5. Okay? So, that is 2,047,140 divided by 5. That is 409,428. Annual depreciation. So, yung entry lang natin dyan, debit, depreciation, expense, credit your accumulated depreciation, which is at 409,428. Okay, 409,428. Now, as to your interest expense, again, effective interest method, diretso na lang tayo, no? Hindi na natin to bibigyan ng amortization schedule. So, basically, ito, because there are no other factors affecting, so yung present value lang talaga. So, the interest expense is basically computed as 2,274,600 multiplied by your implicit rate of 10%. So, 2,274,600 times 10%. So, that is 2,274,60. Okay? 2,274,60. So, yung entry lang natin dyan is that, diba this is interest expense? So, ibawas natin dyan yung annual payment na, kano yung annual payment? 600,000. So, the applicable principal would be 600,000 less 227,460. The applicable to principal is 3,725,40. Okay? 3,725.40. So, entry for the amortization. Debit lease liability at 372,540. Debit interest expense at 227,460. Credit cash at 800,000. Diba? Ito yung entry natin in the books of the lessee. Now, in the books of the buyer lessor, okay? So, before that, by the way, no? So, actually, yung complication lang naman dito, if there is a sale and lease back, okay? Yun nga, number one, we need to compute for the retained asset, which is basically equivalent to your right of use asset here. This is not the typical computation of your right of use asset wherein, kumbaga, parang equal lang siya to your lease liability. Hindi. Okay? So, the point is, right of use asset that is equivalent to the lease liability over your fair market value multiplied by the carrying amount. Kasi nga, kinukuha natin kung magkano ba sa carrying amount ang nare-retain. Okay? Then, we need to adjust the gain, which is computed as the, again, lease liability over your fair market value multiplied by the total gain. Okay? So, yung i-recognize lang is yung portion na sale talaga. Deducted na yung na-retained na asset. Okay? Yan yung point. Then after that, subsequent recognition, normal na. That is depreciating your right of use asset. Then, effective amortization, schedule na for your lease liability. Okay? So, in the books of the lessor buyer, okay? Now, the first thing that we need to know is, ano ba to? Finance or operating lease? Diba? So, if you look at it, yung lease term lang is 5 over the life na 10 years, so 50%. Then, there is no transfer of title nor a purchase option. It is reasonably certain. The point is, this is not a finance lease. Okay? So, we will use the operating lease method. So, madali na lang. Okay? Madali na lang. So, on January 1, okay? January 1, 2020, in the books of the lessor, we will debit machine. Recognize first the purchase of the machine. Then credit cash at fair value of 5 million. Okay? Then on 12/31, 2020, normal recognition of rent income. So that is debit, cash, credit, rental, income at 800,000. Okay? Then your depreciation of the machine, which is basically divided by 10 years. So 5 million divided by 10 years. So that is 500,000. So, our entry for the depreciation is debit, depreciation, expense, credit, accumulated depreciation at 500,000. And typical entry na subsequently. So, madali lang. Okay, madali lang. So, that is your first example, or that is our first example for sale and leaseback. Okay, that is our first example for sale and leaseback. No? So, let's go to the second scenario. So, our next scenario, okay, sale and leaseback pa rin siya. Okay, sale and leaseback. But this time, no? What if the sales price daw is below the fair market value? Okay? So, Under the guidance of IFRS 16, okay? Under the guidance of IFRS 16, in measuring the right of use asset, okay, in measuring your right of use asset in a sale and leaseback transaction, we need to adjust, okay? We need to adjust the sales price to equal to its fair market value. Okay? We need to adjust the sales price to equal at its fair market value in measuring only your right of use asset. Okay? Again, that is only in the measurement basis. But, in the recognition, yung actual na nga entry, hindi. Or kumbaga, kasi yung point na kasi dito is that, if we measure the right of use asset, diba we will use the lease liability as a factor to your fair market value? No? So the point is, we need to adjust the sales price that would equal to its fair market value. Any effect, okay, any effect of that or yung any adjustment, i-reflect natin sa lease liability na gagamitin as a factor to the fair market value applied to your carrying amount. So, paano yan siya i-apply? The point is, any difference, okay? Any difference between the fair market value and the sales price is either or added depende if the fair market value is lower or higher. No? So if the fair market value is lower, okay? If the fair market value is lower, if the fair market value is higher than the sales price, so basically sales price at below fair market value, any difference daw, okay, any difference between the fair value and the sales price is to be treated as if there was a prepayment that occurred. That is why yung sales price naging 4 million. So, any amount measured as a lease liability, kulang daw yun. Ano yung kulang niyan? Anong kulang dyan? Yung difference ng sales price at fair value. So, we need to adjust that in measuring our right of use asset. Okay? However, remember this, no? Remember this kasi dito medyo nakakalito talaga. In recognizing your lease liability, okay? In recognizing your lease liability, hindi yung remeasured amount yung gagamitin. Okay? But rather yung original lease liability. Again, gumagawa lang tayo ng remeasurement to compute for what is the right of use asset. Klaro yun siya ha? Pag below fair market value, i-add siya sa lease liability to get your remeasured liability because as if it is daw a prepayment. There was a prepayment that was already deducted. That is why i-add natin para makuha yung total lease liability daw. Okay? Ito yung illustration natin. No? So basically, there is a difference of 1 million. No? Diba? There's a difference of 1 million. Yung sales price is 4, yung fair value is 5 million. Okay? So, point is, we are to compute for our right of use asset and our lease liability. Diba? So let us get first our lease liability. So the number one component, obviously, yung rental payment. Diba? Annual payable at the end of each year, that is 500,000 multiplied by our present value of an ordinary annuity of 2.67. So the original lease liability is 500,000 times 2.67. So, 1,335,000. Ito yung amount na i-record talaga natin as a lease liability. Klaro yun siya, ha? However, this will not be the amount used to measure a right of use asset because what we will do is that let's add to this kasi nga prepayment daw siya. Merong prepayment na hindi na-recognize. So, the total lease liability as if is this amount plus the difference between the sales price and the fair market value which is below yung sales price, diba? Kaya nga prepayment of 1 million. So the basis is the remeasured lease liability of 2,335,000. So after that, okay? After that, to compute for our right of use asset, then the remeasured lease liability over the fair market value of 5 million multiplied by the carrying amount of 3,500,000. So that would be 2,335 divided by 5 million multiplied by 3,500,000. Our right of use asset is 1,634,500. Okay? So, actually, yan lang yung komplikado. Isa sa mga komplikado. Diba? The measurement of your right of use asset. And then, after that, no? Because there is a difference between the sales price and the fair market value. Okay? And that we have remeasured now the sales price, no? Yun nga, itong ginawa natin is basically itong remeasurement of the sales price. The basis of our total gain ngayon is not sales price minus carrying amount, but rather fair market value less your carrying amount. Okay? So with that, we have this computation na yung fair market value natin, which is at 5 million, less the carrying amount of 3,500,000, we have 1,500,000 adjusted, okay, total gain. Okay? Adjusted total gain. So pag nakuha na natin ito, okay, kasi nga, 'di ba? Just remember this, no? Para hindi hindi kayo nalilito. In computing your gain in a sale and leaseback, okay, your total gain, always use the fair market value. Okay, not the sales price. Yung kanina, sales price yung ginamit natin kasi nga sales price is equivalent to the fair market value, so same lang 'yon. But if there are differences, always use the fair market value. Okay, always use the fair market value. So this is your adjusted total gain. Now we need to recognize what is the portion of this gain na i-recognize natin as gain on the rights transferred na yung ginawa natin kanina. So yun, medyo madali na lang to. Kasi nga, again, yung procedure, remeasured lease liability 2,335 million divided by the fair market value of 5 million, okay, multiplied by the adjusted gain, yung base sa fair market value. Okay? So, again, 2,335 million divided by 5 million multiplied by 1,500,000, 700,500. Ito yung gain not to be recognized. Kasi nga, this pertains to the gain retained by your right of use asset. Okay, not to be recognized. Less the gain minus the gain not to be, the adjusted total gain less the gain not to be recognized. Okay? Less yan siya. So 1.5. Obviously, we have a gain to be recognized of 799,500. Diba? So, dali na lang. Journal entry na tayo. On January 1, 2020. So again, debit cash. Kung magkano yung na-receive natin? 4 million. Obviously, equivalent to the sales price kasi ito yung na-receive natin na pera, di ba? Then, debit your rights of use asset. Magkano? 163,500. Yung na-compute natin kanina. Okay? Then, credit your lease liability, which is ito nga equal to the original lease liability and not your kumbaga not your sana yun? Okay? And not your remeasured amount. Kung saan na yun? Ay, ito. Ito. 1,335,000. Diba? Then, credit your machinery. Yung item na ibinenta mo talaga, no? But lease it back. At always carrying amount. Which, in this case, that is 3,500,000. Then your gain on rights transferred, which is 799,500. Yung gain to be recognized. Diba? Sa subsequent recognition, same na yun kanina. Actually, yung computation lang talaga sa gain of right transferred and yung right of use asset, yung medyo komplikado, no? So, points to remember. Okay? Remeasure your lease liability. Diba? That is, kumbaga, any difference from the fair market value and the sales price, yun yung amount to be remeasured sa yung lease liability, remeasured lease liability, na gagamitin to get you as a numerator or as a factor in computing your right of use asset. Okay? As your right of use asset and the right and the gain to be recognized. Number 2, the total gain should be the adjusted amount. That means always base your gain on fair market value, not at sales price. Okay? So this is for our sample number 3, no? Or sales price below fair market value. Now, what if baliktad? No? What if above fair market value? Okay? Which is, ito yung example natin or the next or the last scenario na we will try to analyze. So this next example, actually, kabaliktaran lang talaga ito. What if, above na yung fair market value? No? 6 million or sales price is above the fair market value. So 6 million sales price, yung fair value natin is 5 million. Okay? So again, start with the computation of the right of use asset and your lease liability. So, your lease liability, no other factor. So, annual rental of 800,000 times 3.312 That is 2,649,600. This is your original, no? But then again, because there is a difference between the sales price and the fair market value, we need to remeasure this in using this as the factor for your right of use asset. So the difference is 1 million man, di ba? That is 6 million minus 5 million. So the factor to be used is 2,649,600 plus 1 million. I know, sorry. Okay. Again, balik. Now, kanina, because the sales price is below the fair market value, di ba? Yung treatment daw is as if parang may prepayment. That is why the initial liability na na-recognize una is kulang kasi nga may advance payment na hindi na-recognize. So, dapat idagdag. Okay? Dito, yung assumption naman as if lang, okay, as if, is that because mas mataas yung sales price kaysa fair market value, parang may additional na pera na binigay si lessor daw sa atin as additional financing, si buyer lessor. So if that is the point na binigyan tayo ng additional financing, yung lease liability natin ngayon is hindi itong 2,649,600 as if lang, no? So the point is, we will deduct. Kasi nga may additional financing, di ba? So 2,649 less 1 million, so we have 1,649 remeasured lease liability to be used as a basis. So to get our right of use asset, so 1,649,600 divided by fair market value of 5 million multiplied by the carrying amount of what's the carrying amount? 4,500,000. Then we have 1,484,640 right of use asset. Kuha nyo? Actually, yung kaibahan na talaga nito pag yung sales price above the fair market value, instead of i-add to get your remeasured liability, it will be deducted. No? So to compute for your... So next, nakuha natin yung right of use. Yung sa gain na naman, gain to be recognized. Number 1, let's get for the total gain muna. But again, adjusted. So what we mean by adjusted? We will use the fair value instead of the sales price. So that is 5 billion fair market value less the carrying amount of 4,500,000. So the adjusted gain is only 500,000. Okay? It's only 500,000. This is your adjusted gain. So, to get your gain to be recognized, again, going back, the remeasured lease liability of 1,649,600 divided by 5 million multiplied by your adjusted gain of 500,000. Diba? So you have, parang malayo na. So you have 1,649,600 divided by 5 million multiplied by 500,000. So the gain, okay, not to be recognized, okay, do not be confused. This is still not to be recognized because ito nga, kinuha lang natin dito yung portion for the right of use. Diba? So the gain not to be recognized, deduct that from your adjusted total gain. Okay? So the gain to be recognized is 335,040. Okay? Gain to be recognized. 335,040. So entry on January 1, 2020. Debit cash at sales price. Always at sales price. Yung cash. 6 million. Debit your right of use asset. Okay? At 1,484,640. Credit your lease liability. Again, hindi itong remeasured amount ha. Original amount. Lease liability at 2,649,600. Okay? Then, credit your item sold, which is machinery. Again, at carrying amount, which is 4,500,000 always. Di ba? Then, recognize your gain on rights transferred at 335,040. So that is your entry on initial recognition. Again, the rest, subsequent recognition, very basic na yun siya. Same as what we have previously learned. No? So, that ends our series. So, medyo mahaba. No? Actually, komplikado na yung list ngayon because of the changes that happened because of the amendment to IFRS 16, no? Actually, medyo nanibago nga ako kasi iba nga like what I have previously told you from my first video, medyo iba yung recognition ngayon kaysa doon sa nalaman namin before, no? So, need to rethink what I have to empty what I have previously learned, no? So, exciting na topic, medyo mahaba nga lang, and I do hope na kahit konti, no, kahit very brief lang yung mga explanation dito, may nakuha kayong counting learnings. Okay? So I guess that's it. So see you in the next topic. Okay? Good morning once again, everyone.